Number 1. Halloween Creep. So this is my first time posting this story on the web, and it's one of those strange encounters that has stuck with me for years now. And the time I was in 8th grade and going home with a friend. She was from my class, and we planned on having a small get-together and headed out after we got off the bus to go for a walk. Her house was in a sort of neighbourhood, and the road led off into the woods. Though she knew these back roads well, I was still nervous about the area. Me and a little group left to go visit the neat trail out in the backwoods. About halfway down the road, an old rickety car pulls up to us. We figured at first that he was just slowing down to not hit us, as he was going fast, but this guy pulled to a stop. "Where you girl headed?" He was an older dude with scraggly features in this gross wife beater. Kinda stereotypical creepy, you know? So we kind of stuttered out that we're just on a walk. He's sizing us up, and it's getting pretty damn creepy. After some small talk, he laughs and tells us we shouldn't be out and about without a set of men around, then speeds off. Creepy enough, right? Later during our walk, we ran across some blood leading off to the woods, and found this mattress. It was coated in blood. At first, we thought it was a weird Halloween prank, but soon found that it was actual blood. If you've never smelt blood before, I don't know how not. It has a distinct iron smell. So unless someone unloaded a bunch of red-coloured iron on this thing, it wasn't normal. So we look around a bit more at this weird blood mattress deal and find a trail leading off into the woods. And in this weird little alcove we found bloody children's clothes. Me and 2 others from the group ran the hell away from there. The rest were yelling and fighting over something I can't remember. When we got back to the house, our host's dad went to retrieve the 4 others who decided to stay there and fuss. We sat terrified inside the house. We found him later that night driving up and down the roads outside my friend's house. A few of my friends there just hanging out outside, and I got so freaked out I had to leave, so I guess I wound up at home. I'm glad I wasn't there, because a lot of dares my friends did were outside dares, and they told me they saw the car driving around the house slowly. I think at one point he tried to talk to them, but they just ran inside. I always felt weird that our host's dad didn't call the cops. He probably didn't believe us, so yeah, it's not an intense stalker story, and it could be pure coincidence, but it's all still really disturbing to me still. Number 2. The Silhouette. My family have been living in the same house for almost 10 years, but not once did we ever encounter anything supernatural or creepy. Probably because we built this house ourselves and made sure no dead bodies were buried in the soil, so we didn't have to worry about previous families having dark histories or such. Nobody has died in the house either, which is why, when something disturbing finally happened to me on a certain afternoon, I couldn't come up with an explanation why it happened. It was a summer break. You know, those times when you have no school stuff to worry about and you can lay around the house all day. Most of the time, the only people in the house were me, my younger brother, and my grandma, since my mum was working and my older brother had a summer job. After spending hours on the computer, I finally got bored and decided to take a quick bath since that afternoon felt so humid and hot. You see, our bathroom door has this stained glass design or something. I'm not good at describing different types of glass, so you can see the silhouette of people passing by the door, but the other details like eyes, nose or mouth are not clear. When my mom got it installed, I hated it because I was a girl and I don't like the idea of people seeing me while inside there, even if it's just my silhouette, because if you come too close to the glass, the better the person on the other side will see. Because if you come close enough to the glass, the better the person on the other side will see you. I had 2 brothers, so I don't really understand why the hell my mum installed that thing. Anyway, my bath was going fine until I turned my head and realised a tall figure was standing right outside the door. It surely wasn't my grandma, since she's a short person, so I concluded it was my brother because that guy is freaking tall, even if he's younger than me. "Hey, I'm showering, go away," I yelled, but he didn't even move an inch. He's probably just trying to annoy me again, so I decided to throw a shampoo bottle against the door. Go away! Thankfully, he did go away, and I just finished my shower while feeling a bit pissed. As soon as I got dressed, I went to confront him in his room. He was busy playing in his PC. What were you doing standing in front of the bathroom like a creep while I was showering? I wasn't creeping on you, he simply said without even looking at me. I just rolled my eyes and didn't press any further, since he tends to lie when caught doing some crap, and it won't be easy to make him admit to it any further, since he tends to lie when to make him admit to it anyway. I decided to just shrug it off because he didn't do it again. The rest didn't do it again the rest of the day. So maybe he was just bored at that moment. The very next day I was taking a new shower again. When I looked at the door, there he was again, just standing there and probably watching my silhouette move as I showered. Dad! Go away! I screamed, feeling annoyed, but partly creeped out by my brother's actions. I was starting to think that he probably discovered some porn online and is now starting to fantasize about stuff. It was downright creepy. Go away or I'll call Mom! Finally, he started to slowly turn around and walk away, then disappeared into the left hallway. I was about to let out a relieved sigh, but then a different silhouette came running from the opposite hallway and stopped right in front of my door. My blood ran cold when I realised this person is surely my brother. I can clearly see his brown skin, and even the yellow tint of his SpongeBob shirt. The other silhouette, however, was equally tall, but pure black, as if just a shadow. What did you say? He called out. Like he really didn't hear what I have been screaming. I wasn't able to answer because I was completely shocked about what just happened. It was like my mind just went blank. Hey, you okay? My brother's voice snapped me out of it, and I hurriedly got dressed. When I got out, I was greeted by his confused face. I probably looked as pale because I could still feel myself numb from all the shock. I pulled my brother to the living room and started to explain everything to him. He didn't tease or laugh at me because even though we piss off each other most of the time, when one of us is totally shaken up, we know something is surely wrong. He explained that he didn't hear anybody else sneak into the house, and we even have 5 dogs outside for Christ's sake, and none of them barked even once. We didn't want to conclude that it was some paranormal since, just like I said earlier, we never experienced such things in the house after living here for a very long time, and it happened in broad daylight. Don't paranormal entities prefer to haunt people at night? We decided to approach your grandma, since she's the one that has experienced odd things during her younger days. All she told us was that spirits tend to visit homes once in a while, even if they don't know the people living there. She even joked that maybe that certain spirit just fancied me, but that idea only scared me more. 3 of us agreed to keep the matters from my mother, since she's a full-blown skeptic and would probably just nag me saying that I'm reading too much horror stuff. It was already comforting enough for me that 2 people sincerely believed my story. Since that last encounter, I don't enter that bathroom without praying and praying to be kept safe from whatever that thing was. For all I know, it could be a demon, and I sure as hell don't want a demon stalking me. It didn't happen again for a few days, as if to give me a break, but then it visited me again, as if for one final goodbye. Being the very unfortunate me, it was late at night, and most of the lights were already off, although none of us were asleep yet. I was the last to take a shower, but I made sure I had my phone inside the bathroom with me, since the fear was still crawling around my system. I kept my eyes glued to the stained glass as I tried to shower as quickly as I can. I was only halfway done washing away the shampoo when I saw the same black figure slowly walk close to the door. I actually fucking saw how it appeared from the dark hallway, like it has always been there all the time. Heart racing, I slowly reached my phone, letting the shower stay on so that the thing hopefully wouldn't know that I had already noticed it. I was already letting out shaky breaths as I went to my brother's contact number. As soon as I pressed call, my brother's phone started ringing from somewhere in the house. The figure suddenly reached for the doorknob and started trying to open it. The knob was shaking so violently that I thought it would actually break. At that point, I just lost it. I screamed. I let out the loudest scream I ever made in my whole life, hoping that everyone would hear it and come to my rescue. I just felt so fucking helpless, and it was the most horrifying thing I have ever experienced. I felt like whatever that thing was, it wanted to hurt me. When loud footsteps echoed in the hallway, the figure quickly stepped back and immediately disappeared back into the darkness, as if it was never there. When I could hear my brothers and my mum calling for me outside, I fumbled to wrap myself with a towel and open the door. I hugged whoever was nearest to me and cried. Jumbled words of explanation came out of my mouth, and I just hoped that they understood me. Thankfully, my mum didn't nag me and stayed beside me the whole night to assure me that I'll be okay. Immediately after that, my mum had the door removed and replaced it with a normal solid one. Since then, I haven't seen that thing again, though I couldn't deny that I still have the constant fear that one day it will pop in my face and finally get me. I never knew what exactly it was and what it wanted from me. For all I know, it's actually just standing behind that solid door, staring at the plain white surface like it could see me. Like it could still see me. The writer included a photo of the door, which you can see here. Number 3. This has probably happened to everyone. I had zero direction when I was 14. I attended a rough high school, and on weekends I hung out with the guys who were from a worse school, youngest being 16, oldest probably being mid-20s. One night in the half-term holidays, we had gone to a friend's brother's apartment. The place was a sorry excuse for a living area. It was a small and shabby studio apartment, one curtain dividing the main room and a small area where a dirty mattress would lay. I would get bullied there because I completely lacked confidence to speak most of the time. I just went around with these guys because it was the only way of life I was even remotely comfortable with. Things had been getting out of control. Everyone had just been smoking ditch weed and drinking bottom shelf alcohol. Undistinguishable music would be playing in the background as smoke filled the entire room, leaving you feeling with that grotty and dirty feeling like you needed to brush your teeth and clean your nails. One night I left early around 11 p.m. Right after I left, I had called my mum to come and pick me up from a nearby hard shoulder for buses and main road on a main road. Only at this time in the UK everywhere was dead. Complete silence. I was surrounded by closed shops and it was dead silent. The hard shoulder / bus stop was positioned exactly where an alley was, which led into an extremely old, disgusting men's toilet about 10 feet from the entrance. I've heard they are now all closed and barred up, but at this time they weren't. I should say at this point that I didn't look my age for a teenage boy. From my pictures I look about 11/12. As I am waiting, a man walks past me but immediately stops and looks back at me. He was hesitant to speak, before eventually directly looking at me after a few glances and asked me for the time. Having looked at my phone just a moment before I told him what I remembered, he looked away, now standing near me, and began pacing back and forth, looking as if he was waiting for someone. Bear in mind, there is no one else in sight, just me and him. He looked fairly average, maybe early 40s with short black hair. At 14 I was about 5'6", so he must have been roughly 5'11". He was holding a small disposable HMV bag with something other than DVDs in it. For Americans, HMV is a dying CD/DVD store in the UK. I wasn't entirely concerned at first because I had a fairly tough attitude and I wasn't exactly in a happy place in my life. but as I was glancing at his bag, he had moved to a different angle, and the side of the bag which was white, clearly revealed the dulled silver head of a hammer. I gave a funny look and glanced up at him to find him dead in his tracks, looking at me. He knows what I just saw. Looking at me like he knows what I just saw. I continued to maintain eye contact as he then slowly began to walk towards the alley, still looking at me until he was out of sight. I'm genuinely concerned at this point, and I looked towards the direction my mum would be driving from, now anxious to go home. I've moved away from the alley slightly, but I can hear rustling shoes scuffing against the pavement from the alley. Then it's silence. Maybe a couple minutes pass before I distinctively hear a psst. I can see my mum turning the corner and driving towards me. She pulls over and unlocks the central locking. I jump in immediately, press the button to lock all the doors before I buckle in, and we begin to drive off. As we drive off, I looked out the window down the alley and saw the man peek his head around from the men's toilet before jolting it back, trying to hide it. Might sound strange, but from what I briefly saw, he was no longer wearing clothes. I don't know what would have happened if my mum turned up 2 minutes later. Number 4. The New York subway deaths. One of my friends is a paramedic in New York. Don't ask me why, but it was always his dream to become one. And New York being the big and wild city it is, he has of course seen some crazy things. He doesn't talk about his experiences much, since they are always very personal and often disturbing. But I know that he has encountered his fair share of gruesome stabbings and gunshots. For example, he told us how one time some kids were playing with a shotgun, and one of them got his jaw blown off. The boy was still alive as my friend rushed him to the ER and eventually lived, but he is horribly disfigured now and has to eat through a tube for the rest of his life. There were other stranger things. He told us once how he responded to a call where an elderly woman managed to decapitate herself at home alone. They found her body sitting in a chair in front of the TV, which was still on, and her head laying on its side in the middle of the floor beside a puddle of blood. Her door was locked and all the windows were closed. All we know is that her neighbours heard a loud thud in her apartment and called the police when she didn't answer the door. But no one has figured out exactly how it happened. Yet by far the strangest, creepiest story that he ever told us is the one about the mysterious subway deaths that happened several years ago. A few of my other friends and I were hanging out at his apartment one time, drinking and listening to music, when the topic of ghosts came up. We started talking playfully about ghost experiences we had as children. Just shadows in the corner of the eye, feelings of being watched, and stuff like that. But then my friend spoke up and said in a very serious voice that he wanted to tell us a story that he swore to God actually happened and freaked him out so much that it sometimes kept him awake, and when he rode the subway late at night, almost gave him panic attacks. We all became serious as he told us the following story, which I will now tell you. So my friend said a couple of years ago that the ambulance crews started getting calls about once every week about people found dead on the subway. The deaths always happened between a few particular stations. He said the names, but I can't recall them exactly. The New York subway is huge. And always happened late at night when the cars were almost deserted. In fact, the victims were always found alone in the subway cars, sitting or lying on the benches, and there were never any witnesses. Another detail is that all the victims were males and died of heart attacks, sometimes even when they were unusually young. After the calls had been coming in steady for a couple of months, the story started to get to some minor attention. The police checked the footage from the cameras in the stations, but never saw anyone to get on or off the trains regularly that had made them think that a particular person was causing the heart attacks with drugs or a stun gun or by some other means. There was no explanation. It seemed that some unlucky guy would be riding a subway car, everyone else would happen to get off, and then sometime when he was low in the car between stations he would simply have a massive heart attack and die. The newspaper even ran a small insert about the case in the back reaches of the police blotter. Perhaps you even saw it. Asking for information, yet nothing came out of it, but eventually my friend was lucky or unlucky enough to get a clue about what might have been going on. He was on duty one night when his crew responded to a call about one of the heart attacks, but this time the person managed to survive. They picked him up from the platform of one of the stations, where he was lying on the ground with a jacket from a Good Samaritan who called 911 under his head. The person who placed the call was still there and said that when he entered the car he saw the man sitting slumped over on one of the benches and grasping for breath. Then he called 911 when the man indicated that he needed help. My friend assisted in strapping the guy, who was about 40 or so, into a stretcher and was with him in the back of the ambulance as they went to the emergency room. The man was well enough to talk, and my friend listened to him while he did whatever medical things one does in such a situation. Soon he realised that something abnormal was going on in the subway, something that still disturbs him to this day. The man said that he was on his way home from an exhausting shift at work late at night as usual. There were just a few people in the car when he boarded, and he was very tired and starting to nod off as he sat in the car. He said he remembered at one point between the naps that the car became deserted except for him. Then he suddenly awoke to find himself paralysed. He couldn't see in front of him what was going on, but couldn't move anything, not even blink. He tried to yell, to moan, to do something, but the only result of his inward efforts was silence. He said that he had experienced sleep paralysis before, usually at home, but it was what happened next that almost killed him. As he was sitting there paralysed, the train rolling between stations, he saw a little girl walking towards him. She was neither happy nor sad. He said just an average little girl you would see walking down the street, but she was transparent, as if he were watching a reflection in a window. But he began to feel extremely anxious as she came nearer, but still couldn't move. She did not look at his eyes, but he said that she looked at him as if she knew him. She acted like it as well. She climbed up onto his lap and curled herself into a ball as if to sleep, just the way you often see little girls do with their parents when they are tired. At that moment, he said his heart attack started. The little girl was cold and motionless as she sat in his lap, and he said that the cold from her crept over his whole body until it began to feel like someone was squeezing the middle of his chest. He started to lose his breath, but there was nothing he could do. The little girl just sat there in his lap, filling him up with cold. Suddenly the subway arrived at the next station, and the little girl dissolved, the man's words, from his lap just before he heard the door open. That's when the Good Samaritan who made the call came up to him, he said. My friend related that the man survived the incident and recovered fully. The calls about heart attacks continued to come in for another month or so, then mysteriously stopped just as quickly as they started. No conventional explanation was ever found that could fully explain the incident. My friend offered a couple theories of his own as to what might have happened. First, he said that sleep paralysis is fairly common and often is accompanied with vivid dreams and hallucinations, which could explain what the man saw. Yet it does not explain the wave of heart attacks, all occurring to males alone on the subway, all between roughly the same stations. Unfortunately, for the sake of finding the truth, the lucky man was, at least to my friend's knowledge, the only one to survive, and consequently there are no other stories to corroborate his. The other theory is that there really was a ghost of a little girl who caused heart attacks on the subway. Like any big city, New York has a lot of domestic crime, many broken families. My friend speculated that she was a girl who was perhaps killed by one of her parents, who maybe died when she somehow wandered into the subway tunnels after running away from home, and spent the time after her death searching for her father. Of course, no one knows for sure. After my friend finished speaking, we all sat there silently, staring at the ground. Some upbeat song played in the background from the stereo, but the mood was dead by now, and stayed that way until my friends and I went home. When we did, I don't think a single one of us took the subway that evening. Number 5. You should smile more. Alright, so my encounter was with a guy on a train. It was about 9 p.m. and I was on my way to the city next to mine. I wanted to meet a friend there, as well as visit my auntie in her little shop. It was a hot day, so I was just wearing a short playsuit and a cardigan. I got a bit of social anxiety, and I really don't like people sitting next to me or touching me, and strangers talking to me are the worst. However, I was determined to be friendly and win against the anxiety. So I entered my train, and while looking around I noticed there aren't any completely free seat groups. I sit down facing a young man, around 25 I guess. He looks normal to me, nothing creepy about him. He looked like the most normal person, and as I am a very short and pretty weak girl, I am always careful to pick someone that could help me. The guy has a normal height and fit body type, dark hair and beard, button-up and jeans, and he looked friendly. When I sit down, I give him a smile, as I remember people telling me I should smile more, which he returns and then keeps reading on his tablet. I start reading as well. The guy is all set up with his laptop on the table, his bag on the other seat, some food and drink, so he has to be sitting in here for a while. Now I keep my bag on my lap because I don't want to be rude or have someone steal it. Through the 40-minute train ride, I keep looking up and out of the window, and sometimes my eyes hit the guy in front of me, and he always looks back and smiles. I also feel him looking at me while I read. He packs up some of his stuff during the ride, so about 5 minutes before I have to leave the train, the guy gets up and sits down right next to me for absolutely no reason. He doesn't try to talk to me, but I can still feel him looking. I just push myself a bit further into the wall, as I am starting to get anxious. When my station is announced, I hop up and position myself next to the door. Not only am I happy to get out of that situation, but I also have this weird fear that I'll miss my stop if I don't get up immediately when it's announced. About 2 minutes after I got up, the guy gets up and stands behind me, waiting to get out. This creeps me out a bit, since he just sat down beside me and didn't show any intentions of leaving, as he also kept sitting. When we got out, he starts walking in the same direction and stays behind when I walk faster. I lose him eventually when I get lost and run around the train station searching the right way to get out. The day goes alright. I tell my friend about my weird encounter, and she says I should watch out. She even makes a joke about how I should watch out. Not that I have a stalker. We go for drinks and to the park, and about 4:30 I decide to go home. On my way to the station, I change my mind and go into a bookshop near the jewellery shop of my aunt. An hour later I go back to the station and see that the train will come in about 20 minutes. As I am thirsty, I go into the McDonald's next to the station to get a drink. I watch over the bags of a lady who just wants to get a meal, and after she's back I have about 3 minutes until the train comes. There was already one train that I missed that was announced too shortly for the lady with the bags, so I wished her a nice day and go stand outside and wait. Guess who's standing there reading his tablet? Right? The creepy train dude. I turn around on the spot, not sure if he has seen me, but I decide to wait for the next train in 20 minutes that'll go the same route. No way I am getting on the train with that weirdo again. I start up a conversation with the lady, and she seems nice enough. 5 minutes after the train has passed, I go out again. I stop in my tracks. Trainded still stands there, waiting for the train. I look at him with disbelief. Sure, he could just be wanting to take that train back, but why not take the one a few minutes ago that takes the same route? At this moment he looks at me, raises an eyebrow and smiles. I try to smile back and quickly look at my book. In the next 15 minutes, I get some meters in between the guy and I. When the train arrives, it's full, and there is no seats without a neighbour, so I sit down next to a small woman, and with that is holding a book as well. There are a few nice seats with quiet neighbours down the train, but my eyes see creepy train dude at the other side of the gangway opposing me, sitting with a 3-kid loud annoying family. I look out of the window, but over the whole ride I can feel him looking at me. Some stares you can just physically feel. Halfway through the ride, a tall man with a dog positions himself next to my seat, cutting off my view on the guy. Thankful, I look at him and he smiles unknowingly. What huge favour he does to me right now. During the ride, I send a few messages to my friend like, "Trainded is here," and "I'm freaking out, help me," etc. And she tells me to get out into crowds and speaks to someone if it's too bad. When my stop is announced, I get up and go to the door. Now guess who is leaving at the same stop? Correct, creepy train dude. He just stands behind me, a bit too close for my taste, and so I step a bit away. He doesn't come closer, thankfully. I sent my friend a text that he's leaving at my stop. At this point, I am really freaking out because I know he didn't get on at my stop. When I get off, I literally run through the crowd towards the exit and down to my underground station. While on the escalator downstairs, I can see him pacing down in the hallway. At my tube, I'm still pretty freaked out, and I look around at every stop to look if he isn't at my tube. Thankfully, I never saw him again. No idea what his intentions were, or if he followed me, or maybe he was just too shy to talk to me. But he creeped me out for good. In case he planned on following me further, creepy smiling train dude, let's not meet ever again.